What's going on, guys? Right, my teacher in the house, and we are back with the GPL post-draft power rankings for the Johto League. As you may have noticed, above me, just up here, there might be a bit of a change of logo from last season. Unfortunately, Trancel has decided not to be an inferior analyst again this season, so he's decided to swap over to do power rankings. But either way, Trancel, how you doing, man?
Yeah, not too bad. It was super close and it came right down to the wire. But hey, I thought I'd try power rankings this time.
Yeah, because this is the only thing he can't lose to me at. He beats me at everything else, so, you know, it works. Alright, so, just to be clear for you guys, of course, most of you have heard of this before, and most of you have seen this before, but we will be ranking these based on our opinions alone. Normally, these are done by win-loss and differential, but for those of you who may have already realized, we haven't played a match yet, so there might be a bit of a problem doing it that way. So this one is largely going to be a little bit more subjective. We are going to try and be very clear as to what we expect to see. For me, a lot of the time, it's generally completed cores. We talk a lot about Fire, Water, Grass, Fairy, Dragon, Steel. If you're missing one, that might be a problem, but it could be patched up by anything else. Things like entry hazards and hazard removal are generally very well thought of in draft, so that's something we are going to be looking at. Things like utility, especially things like knockoff and defog. Obviously, defog comes under removal, but things like utility moves often play a pretty big part. Playstyle things do matter. Obviously, if we have seen you guys before, there will be certain playstyles that fit certain players. That will be something we look at as well, which may be a little more subjective, of course. And then alongside that, decent mix of bulk and offense, and physical and special. These are all things that we look at as to what makes a well-rounded competitive team. So that's what we've tried to balance it down. Trancel and I sat down for a good few hours trying to balance everything out. It was a bit of a nightmare for some of us because some of our teams are pretty well-rounded and some playstyle matters as well. But with that all being said, please bear in mind this is our opinion, so feel free to call us out if there's something that we've missed. Let us know what you think as well, because it does matter. It's nice to see you guys engaging. But with all that being said, let's go into rank number 10. Our bottom ranked team is going to be Nico and the Cataclysmic Conkelders. What do you think about this draft, Trancel?
Yeah, so he didn't draft this, so we don't know like if he would have like adapted mid-draft. It was drafted by Chaos, because there's a lot of like duplicate typings in like Cinderace, Rotom, Heat, Klefki, Bishop, which may play a part into weaknesses.
Yeah, there's 3 electric types there as well, with Rotom, Heat, Octazalt, and Lantern. Yes, admittedly, yeah. Rotom Heat does have Levitate, but the other 2 are also weak to Ground. Ground being a very, very big weakness of this team, with all of Cinderace, Octazalt, Klefki, Lantern, and Bishop not appreciating Ground-type moves. Of course, Lunatone and Rotom Heat do get Levitate, so they are kind of exceptions to that rule, but that is a pretty alarming weakness. Is it nice to see the Conkeldurr, of course? We did see that last season. It is his mascot. Interesting enough, he's actually dropping it for week 2. He's replacing it with Alakazam, which does actually pair up nicely with the Indeedee, so it makes a lot of sense as to where the Indeedee pick comes from. Originally, we were looking at that and kind of questioning where that came from, but now I kind of understand why, because Alakazam does get Rising Force, but he won't have that until week 2. So nonetheless, he has to play me first. This is not really a matchup that he's going to be looking forward to. I do have a Mudsdale, which shuts down a lot of this team, which is a bit of a problem for him. But I do think this draft, generally speaking, obviously the big ground weakness is a problem. He also doesn't have a grounded poison type, so Toxic Spikes can potentially be an issue. And alongside that, obviously we talked about how the duplicate typings. He doesn't really have a lot of hazards either. Like, yes, Klefki gets Spikes, but I don't see a lot else other than that. Bishop and Lunatone both get Stealth Rock, but Bishop's not a very good Stealth Rocker, and Lunatone I don't envisage coming to a lot of games. So there's not really a lot to talk about for hazards either, which could mean that even things like the Conkeldurr or the Cinderace that require a little bit of chip damage might not get kills and can easily get revenged. So that might be something to look to adjust. Of course, Nico did not draft this team, as we did say, so that definitely does play a factor. It was drafted by somebody else. I don't actually know much about Chaos and his draft experience, but it came across relatively during the draft that I didn't think he was that experienced a drafter. There were definitely a lot of basic drafting mistakes that came by, but that does come from when picks are being left for you. There's not exactly like you can just phone a friend and say which pick should happen instead. So it's a little unfortunate for Nico, but hopefully he can patch his team up as the season goes on. So, coming in at number 9 then, might be a little surprising, but it's actually going to be Arvid and the Big Medal. Now, honestly, Arvid's team, when you look at Rillaboom, G-Max, and Melmetal, actually seems kind of interesting. Obviously, Melmetal, well, in my opinion, should have been banned. We allowed it this season, but it is what it is. Rillaboom does pair nicely with it, with that grassy terrain, giving Melmetal even more longevity. Of course, Melmetal's weakness is special defense, but that's pretty much where the good of this team ends. Yes, Mew is a good pick as well. Mew is a very, very solid tier 1 with its versatility. But I don't understand the Hitmontop pickup. Now, we did get one free agency trade. Hitmontop for Morpeko definitely does not feel like a trade I would have done. Morpeko is a very, very hard-hitting mon, especially with a choice band. Does get Aura Rail for speed boosting. Hitmontop really lacks offensive pressure. Yes, it gets multiple priority moves. Does get Intimidating Technician, but I don't feel like it adds much to this team other than a spinner. But looking at the team in general, like it struggles to hit very hard. Like, yes, Melmetal hits pretty hard. Rillaboom can hit somewhat decently hard. And then, like, Chandelure on the special side. But I'm struggling to see where a lot of the offense comes from. I'm kind of struggling to see, like, a win condition outside of just Melmetal clicking buttons.
What I see is he could go for something more offensive with Ninetales setting up screens, Mew maybe being a late game win con, or it just sets up hazards. Drapion could set up toxic spikes kind of thing, and you got Cutie5 for webs, but though that's probably not going to come to barely any games because it's a Cutie5.
Yeah, I only ever really manages to run Sash Lead webs and pretty much dies, but it dies to priority regardless.
So it might be pretty one-dimensional if that's how he wants to go for it. For hazards removal, he's got Mantine, Cutie5, Mew, Hitmontop. So
Meltine
he's all right on that.
I don't know if it gets Rapid Spin. I can't remember if it ever did. But yeah, there's some okay hazards here. There's more removal than there is hazards, which is a little bit annoying. But it's the heavy hitters that I'm concerned about, generally speaking. I think there's a lot of mons that may not come to too many games.
Yeah, it's surprising to have to rank a Melmetal team this down low, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll absolutely see how that goes. Alright then, so coming in at number 8 is going to be Sylvie and the Miami Sylveons. Again, this one definitely feels like a weird one when you see Corviknight and Zeraora being this far down the list. But there's definitely a lot of issues surrounding this team. I think the primary issue is the amount of duplicate typings we see. Obviously, we see Primarina and Seeking, duplicate Waters. We see duplicate Fairies with Primarina and Sylveon. We see duplicate Grasses with Rotomo and Flapple. There's quite a few coming in here that could be a bit of an issue. Plus, the Glalie pickup, don't really get that one. I feel like Glaceon was actually better for this team. But nonetheless, this team does look like it hits relatively hard. I'm struggling to see a huge amount of bulk, which could be an issue. Limited entry hazards might suck a little bit as well. I don't see that many entry hazards. Yes, Glalie does get spikes, which could be a justification for bringing it, I guess. But aside from that, there's not too much. Lycanroc getting stealth rocks, but Lycanroc doesn't really want to run rocks. It's more of a late game sweeper. So, kind of seems a little bit odd to me as to why he would pick that up. But it does hit pretty hard on both sides though, with the Zeraora. Especially with being a very good mixed attacker. So I'm interested to see where this goes.
Yeah, I could see him running like a typical Lycanroc set that could be like Stealth Rock's Endeavor.
Oh god,
the
Sash Endeavor set. Man, those were
the Sash Endeavor.
Sash Endeavor, Stealth Rock, not Stealth Rock, Accelerock. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. Savali just seems like it's just kind of there to patch like the huge like. He doesn't have a dark type, so like Psychics, just have fun with this team, and yeah, just basically relying on Savali, and then that could be abused by ghost types as well. I think it'll be kind of a struggle defensively. Obviously Zeraora could be quite the monster, but if that's his only threat, I'm sure there'll be people have prepped for it.
As I found out last season, everybody preps for Zeraora, funnily enough. But yeah, I do feel like while it does have some nice parts to it, it's missing a few little details that I kind of like adding. So it's an unfortunate one, but hopefully Sylvie proves us wrong. We'll see what happens. Maybe some patchwork might be needed throughout the season, but we'll see. So, coming in at number 7 is gonna be Xanadu and the Cherrim Pickers. What are you thinking?
So this is probably one of my most favorite, like, terms of like creative draft. It just might be a bit weird to like work as like a 6-mon like unit, because there's a lot of like different, like you got Weather, you got Trick Room, you got Unburden Mon with Pink Urchin and Lucha. Yeah, it's hazards. It seems to be very reliant on Marak getting up stealth rocks, which isn't too bad, but you don't want to be relying on that.
Yeah, I think
all
Pink
the
Urchin
time.
gets toxic spikes as well, if I remember right.
Yeah, it gets spikes as well. Obviously, getting Rising Voltage now definitely makes it hit hard, but it's still very slow, so there'll be a lot of like prep to get it in with Trick Room, which is definitely doable with Porygon 2 getting Teleport and Trick Room.
Yeah, I think BHM gets both as well, but I don't think BHM's going to come to a lot of games. It's kind of a weak middle tier Psychic. I do like the Sizzle pick though. Sizzle is kind of an underrated pick here as a decent defensive pivot, especially with Defog. Does get bullet punch for priority as well, nice. And U-turn. U-turn's always nice to have. And it doesn't seem to be a huge amount of pivoting options though, which might be a little awkward. Yes, there is the Teleport, but Teleport is negative priority, so you're taking a hell of a lot of damage on P2 before that happens. I feel like this team actually could be very strong. The issue is there's like so many components of so many different playstyles that it's going to be hard to pick which one actually makes the team a 6. I think that's the issue that we have, is there's not a huge amount of synergy for the overall team. But that being said though, interesting enough, there's no fire type here either from what I'm seeing. Marak, I guess, but yeah, kind of an interesting pick. Obviously being Ghost actually helps. It's got okay Fire, Water, Grass score. The Blastoise definitely helps. Vileplume's an interesting one. Vileplume without Sun definitely seems questionable. But it does get Strength Sap, so it could actually be kind of useful. But yeah, it's an unfortunate one. No Suncore, unfortunately, so no Cherrim. Feels bad, man. Would have been funny to see it. But it is what it is. But I'm interested to see where this team goes. I don't know much about Xanadu. Xanadu is someone that Denistrio knows very well. So I'll be interested to see how it plays out, as I believe she plays Arvid week 1. So that's going to be interesting. I'll be looking forward to that one. But let's keep on going. Number 6, he's going to hate me for this one, but it's going to be Gekokami and the Omega Quagsires. I want to like this team more, but I kind of can't. I'm kind of stuck in a lot of ways. He doesn't have a huge amount of special offensive pressure on this team. Magnezone kind of being his hardest hitting one. I mean, there is Slowking, I guess, but Slowking's more defensive. Weezing could be specially offensive, but again, that's more defensive. I feel like he's going to be relying on a lot with Weezing, especially, and Mandibuzz as well, for like decent defensive pivots. Slowking's not a bad defensive pivot either, thanks to Regenerator, of course. But it kind of makes me worry a little bit. There's also no grass type on this team, which is something that can be a little bit of a problem. Does give ground on water types a bit of fun. He doesn't really appreciate water types all that much anyway, especially with a Colossal Piloswine and a Galarian Dom if it does get into Zen mode. Not a huge fan of that.
Yeah, he's Slowking's his only water resist that I'm seeing. Oh, and Haxorus, I guess.
Yeah. But Haxorus doesn't really appreciate taking 2 special water moves. It's not got good stuff.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's kind of a struggle. He made a switch from Salazzle to Colossal, which was his fastest Mon, so now his highest speed tier is Haxorus, with no webs. Might be an issue, so he's probably forced to run Scarfers most of the time, or some like Trick Room with Slowking, and I guess Dusclops gets Trick Room as well.
It does, yeah.
Which might be able to work hazards-wise. The Colossal definitely helps with that. Gives him a rapid spinner to help his, I'd say, somewhat passive defensive core. And then he's got rocks on Piloswine as well. But I think if you're able to navigate with hazards and hard hitters, this team may struggle. Grimmsnarl, I think, is definitely like a highlighting point, and we'll have to see how Dom with only Zen mode goes.
Yeah, he picked us last in the draft order, which was kind of an interesting pickup. There was quite a lot of things left on the table that I thought might have got picked. I was looking at Terrakion as kind of my first thought.
Yeah.
I think Tarak would have been exceptional on this team. But it could definitely be a fun one. I'll be interested to see how the Dom plays out. I do feel like it may struggle this season, but we'll see. This probably isn't the best team for it, generally speaking, but we'll have a look. We'll see how well he plays. I think he's got a very strong play style, so I'll be interested to see how well he proves us wrong. But coming in at number 5 is going to be this season's inferior analyst. It's going to be Denicio, and he's Swansea Soul Blazers. Oh man, this team has so much potential, but at the same time it struggles a lot with its speed tiers outside of the Gengar and the Cinderace and the Boltund. I feel like his team is incredibly slow, aside from that. Originally, he did have a Fairy type in Hatteran, which I actually think wasn't the worst fit for this team. It wasn't great, but it wasn't the worst either. He actually swapped that out for Milotic, which means he has no Fairy anymore. And Milotic doubles up on Bulky Waters. I don't feel like that's worth it, especially as he's facing a Zeraora week 1. I don't really understand the decision behind that one, but I can only assume he's patching up his team with his free agency picks for later on, because otherwise the Milotic pick makes no sense. But looking at this team in general, it is slow. That is the problem. It does have webs with Araquanid, which is not too bad. And with okay hazards, with Drottningham and rocks. Trying to think. I think Palossand gets rocks as well. I'm not entirely sure. I think Lycanroc gets it. But generally speaking, this team is very slow. It is kind of punishable in that sense. Faster teams will hit it pretty hard. The Gengar G-Max is not quite as strong as it could have been with no item. That definitely doesn't help. The Life Orb miss is probably going to be a bit sad. It could of course be a Zyka Scarf set, but it's not anymore because it can only hold a Pokeball. I'll be interested to see how Gengar does actually play out now without the item making it stronger. But I think generally speaking, aside from that, I actually don't mind this team so much. I'm sort of indifferent on it. It's the speed tiers that are really lacking for me.
Yeah, I was hoping he would get something for Rillaboom's Grassy Surge, which I think he has now, but not for week 1. But
something else he doesn't have, I've just noticed this, is a big removal weakness. Like Corviknight with Defog seems to be the only obvious removal. That's kind of a problem as well.
Yep. That was definitely a big one. It's very pressure on the Corviknight. Obviously, he could do stuff with like Araquanid, sets up webs, and then he can abuse people trying to get rid of it with Defog with Milotic and Boltund, because they both have competitive.
That's true.
It's definitely something interesting to see if that plays out.
I mean, Araquanid does get Magic Coat, so there is one way to try and bounce rocks back, but it feels like it's kind of suboptimal. Obviously, Cinderace does get Court Change as well, but Court Change, I've never been a fan of Court Change as a move. Since it came out, I don't think it's reliable. A lot of people seem to think it's busted, but I don't really see how it is. If rocks are up on both sides, all it does is swap the other rocks around. Doesn't do anything. So
yeah,
it's one of those where I don't want to call it removal, because I don't necessarily call it... I don't think it necessarily removes the hazards, it just swaps them. Which could be good, it could be bad. It could also have absolutely zero value whatsoever. So it's kind of awkward. I would like to see him pick up a Defogger or two, or like an extra spinner. Would definitely...
Maybe a fighting type as well.
Even well. Fighting would also be nice. There's a lot of things going on. I think Gurdurr is still sitting in tier 4, which would be a Defogger. So that could be something to look at, potentially. It would also be the fighting type that he's missing. I actually really like Gerda, by the way. I think Gerda's underrated. But that's just my personal opinion. Alright, coming in at number 4 then is going to be the guy that doesn't like stall but drafted a stall team. Just kidding. It's going to be Burger, of course, the Firefighters Republic City. I like some parts of this team. Orbital G-Max I used last season, had quite a lot of success with it. It's a little nerfed this season, doesn't get to hold the heavy duty boots, which could be a bit of a problem for it. But it does have very solid offensive pressure, this team, with Dragapult and Dusk Lycanroc. And I guess like Mayan Shell kind of somehow fits into that wheelhouse, but I wouldn't necessarily call it the best offensive mon in the world. But aside from that, I just see nothing but bulk and Manectric. But I don't see Manectric offering too much value. It's quick electric type, but it's better on the physical side, which doesn't help it. But I see way too much bulk, and I don't see where the huge amount of offensive pressure is coming from.
He doesn't have any poisons type, so I feel like Toxic Spikes could be a major part in this team. Comfy does get Heal Bell and Defog. So that might be a play, but it's a lot of like setup, and I feel like that would give opponents time to do something else if you're relying purely on Comfy to do that.
Yeah, because his only other defogger is Skarmory by the looks of it.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of his offense is in Dragapult and Lycanroc. If his members can really support these two, then you might see some just great setup for them. But I don't know, Internal of a parting shot for them is nice. I think Mienshao gets U-turn, but just like the whole lowering of stats from Incineroar. And then it's got probably one of the best rockers in Seismitoad.
Yeah, for sure. He's got a nice Wish Pass in Licky Licky as well, which is a weather check as well with the Cloud9. It's nice. Tangler is actually somewhat underrated as a grass type. He's actually very bulky without a Violet. But again, Toxic Spikes does not help it at all, which is the issue there. There's actually quite a few pivots on this team. Orbital Dragapult. Let's see. And Mienshao will get U-turn. I don't remember if Skarmory got it.
No.
But yeah, aside from that, the Volt Switch on Manectric, of course, is not too bad. Parting Shot Incineroar, we said. So there's a few pivoting options which could be nice for the Dragapult and the Lycanroc. But again, it is so heavily reliant on those two, I feel like it might be fairly easy for teams to prep against it. But it is bulky, it is kind of hard to play against, especially if you run out of offensive pressure. So I'm guessing that's where Burger's going to go this season. He's going to try and outlast his opponents, which could be a playstyle that works for him. We didn't see that last season. We saw him play very aggressive. So I'll be interested to see if that playstyle shift definitely boosts him or makes him worse. We'll have to see. Alright, so coming in third then is going to be Professor Elm and the Providence Poliwraths. I believe he's actually debating on changing that name, but we got this for now. Now, I actually have one major highlight of this team, which is his Fairy Dragon Steel Core. The Hydreigon, Togekiss, and Cobalion is an insane trio. These are very versatile Pokemon that have really good synergies with each other. I think this is probably the strongest Fairy Dragon Steel Core in the division. I would say that's very fair. But some of it does kind of fall off a little bit. His Firewater Grass score is not entirely convincing to me. I'm not sold on the Inteleon pick without the ability to hold a Scope Lens. But I do like the Sun Core with the Ninetales and Venusaur. But I would like to have seen a G-Max Lapras on this team, which is possible by dropping the Galarian Corsola, which I think was a mistake pick. For something like Cofagrius or Regigigas, sitting in tier 3 right now would give you the points for the G-Max Lapras. That would be a nice way to go about it, if he so wished. Regigigas does give him a Rocker, a Rapid Spinner. I can't remember if it ever got Toxic Spikes. I know Kofag gets it, but I don't remember if Regigigas got it as well.
They don't get Rapid Spin, I know that.
It doesn't? I could have sworn it did. But maybe I'm wrong. I'm thinking of something else. But it doesn't matter either way. But it does actually get quite a lot for the team. Yes, it does duplicate the ground type with the Claydol, but I don't see Claydol having a huge amount of value. I much prefer Renorigas anyway, because Renorigas is a good spin blocker, as well as being a very physically bulky mon. I've had a nightmare trying to take those things out recently. And of course the Lapras is very, very strong. It doesn't actually need an item to be decent. It does actually give him further immunities. He's got a lot of ground immunities on this team, which I find kind of amusing. But yeah, I love some of the craft of this team. I think it's a very interesting team that he's got. I think he's got a very nice late game cleaner with that Weavile, of course, especially those stab priority eye shards can be very strong. He's got webs in Vikavolt, which is a nice little pickup. He's got plenty of removal with Hydreigon Togekiss on its own being more than enough in a lot of instances. Both can reliably run defog on the teams, no problemo whatsoever. But that's pretty much for me. I really like it a lot. I think there's a lot to offer. I did actually notice a possibility for Excelgor on this team instead of the Claydol, which would then also get rid of the duplicate ground typing. But that may be a little bit detracted because of the teleport pivoting. But Excelgor does get U-turn as well, so it's interesting. There's a few changes I would probably do to this team, but I think this team is very well rounded for what it is for a first-time draft.
Yeah, for sure. I just love the Hydreigon Togekiss. I've seen that core quite a lot, and it's definitely very, very solid.
Yeah. Alright, so I'll let you take the reins on this one, because coming in at number 2 is #biased. Just kidding. It's me. I'll let you take the reins on this one.
Yeah, so as saying for Professor Elm having a really good Dragon Steel Fairy core, you've probably got one of the best Fire Water Grass cores. Very, very solid. Volcarona and Rodent Wash having pivoting, and Amoonguss just being fat and just annoying with Spore. And I just love the Orbeetle to support the Mimikyu with webs. Mimikyu under webs is very scary. 96 speed is definitely something to abuse webs with. And decent removal in Volcarona, I guess. Braviary and Rotom Wash. And decent hazard setters as well. And then the Pangoro kind of just like puts it in a nice little bow, and just great offensive mon. Drell on G-Max, definitely solid. You don't want to be setting rocks with that, so might be a bit more on Mudsdale to do that.
And Carkol as well.
Yeah. I think in terms of speeds tiers, I think it's fine, because you have webs, and a lot of mons are like base 100 to 80 anyway. Yeah, that's what I have to say about it.
I think it's one of those, we were talking about this actually before we started recording, where this is kind of a vintage me style draft, where I don't necessarily draft something that's individually like broken, but I have a team that's got a lot of synergy with each other. Like you can pick a lot of these as a 6-man team, and you would not necessarily feel like you're struggling. I don't generally like a lot of the pivoting options I have. There's plenty of U-turners on this team, and there's nice. I've got the Volt Switcher with Rotom, of course. And Pangoro, of course, getting Parting Shot, which is something Trancel didn't know about until recently.
Hey.
But nah, like, all jokes aside, though, I think this is a very interesting team. I think there's a lot I can do with it. I'm just hoping I can play it correctly, because that's the one thing this team does require, is for me to play this properly, because I don't have, like, the most broken carry except for Volcarona. So I have to play this very carefully. But I'm looking forward to it. I play Nico week 1, so that'll be a nice game to settle in. Hopefully I can play well and start the season off nicely. I actually threw the first game last season, so hopefully I don't do that again, because that would suck. But yeah, that leads us on to number 1 pick, which he's going to love this. I'm going to stroke his ego ever so slightly, but you know what? It's fine, right? It's DJ, of course. What a surprise, he's picked up Weather again. He told me to say that, so slap me later. Just kidding, right? But either way, this is very much a vintage style team for DJ, in my opinion. He's got a Weather core, but his team doesn't rely on Weather to be disgustingly strong. Obviously, the Torkoal is the best Sunsetter. It's better than Ninetales. And then alongside that, we've got 2 Chlorophyll Abusers in Exeggutor, and there's G-Max Venusaur. as well as Darmanitan and Torkoal, which are both disgusting in Sun. They are monsters. I do have one or two small little question marks on this team. I'm not a fan of the Rotom fan pick. I know why he picked it. His mantra for picking it was he needed extra ground resist or stroke immunity. But I feel like he would have been better off just drafting regular Rotom. Regular Rotom being a spin blocker as well as a removal in the pivot offers a bit more than Rotom fan does. So I'm interested to see why he justified the Rotom fan pick. But nonetheless, generally a very, very strong offensive team as a whole. I like the Gobrajar sitting there. Gobrajar is kind of a nice option. Especially under Trick Room. Exeggutor and Gardevoir both get Trick Room, but I believe he actually dropped Gardevoir for week 2, which is an interesting one, because that does take away his very offensive pressure, aside from Galarian Weezing. But Galarian Weezing, not the best offensive Pokemon in the world. But I do like how this is such a DJ-style team. I think Kommo is somewhat underrated on this team, but I think it's going to be an absolute monster.
Yeah, it's just a strong glue. It gives him rock outside of having to be forced to run it on Torkoal all the time. And Weezing with its ability, neutralizing gas, is just super nice for just broken abilities.
For sure.
Yeah.
The other one criticism of this is a lack of a water type. But in all fairness, even though he lacks a water type, he's in a Sun team, so water is generally not that strong in Sun anyway. But you know what? A lack of a water type can be a bit of a pass on this occasion, given how strong his team is against fire anyway. He's got plenty of fire resists, so it doesn't necessarily matter so much. And his ground pressure is fine. He's got double grass, so there's not really a huge deal. Plus, a couple of other ones get grass coverage, like Gobrajar Power Whip and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to offer from this team. This team has got multiple playstyles. It doesn't rely on Sun. It is exactly what you expect from a DJ draft, and it definitely works. It's been working for him for the last couple of seasons, and I expect him to put a lot of work in again. I'm looking forward to my match against him. I'll see what I can do. That's going to be a fun match. There's definitely going to be a lot of trash talk in that match as well. I can see that coming. But yeah, either way, that's of course going to be our rankings for the Johto division. Make sure you stay tuned if you are Hoenn people watching this. That video is coming as well, I promise. But either way, of course, we're going to get on out of here, so thank you so much for watching. My name is Robombi Teacher. That's Trancel.
Yeah, been fun.
Alright, and stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.